name's Sirius Potter. No running in the corridors, if you please. Don't worry, I speak English.
You
British
don't
English. It,
you
it's
don't
what
speak
I do.
American, huh?
Well, I try sometimes if I'm trying to do an accent, but
You're very good at
Uh,
it. Thank you for joining us today on Author Talk with SJC on the Write Me Poetry channel. We are here today with an exciting new guest, and I can't wait for him to introduce himself to you. This is for the James Potter series. We've been talking about, we've gone through chapters 1 through 12 so far on our commentary. But again, we have a special guest today, and I can't wait for you to meet them. So let me pass the mic over to you, co-host.
Thank you, SJ. So my name's Jamie. I am a big fan of the James Potter series, and the audiobooks as well, which are amazing. I highly recommend you listen to them. I've had a grin on my face all day because I knew it was coming. I knew we were doing it today, and I'm like, holy crap, we're actually going to do it. To introduce himself, here is our guest.
Hi, I'm Jus Sargeant, and yes, I narrated the James Potter books. And I'm absolutely honored to be asked to be here um, to talk about the books. It seems a little bit surreal for me because obviously I recorded these many years ago. So this is a little bit nostalgic for me. Um, yeah, we'll see where the questions go because this isn't a scenario I'm used to being sort of on a call talking about things like this and something that's going out to the public. So if I seem a bit nervous, that'll be why.
Oh, no need to be nervous. We are so happy to meet you, Jess. I totally fangirled the first time you messaged me back on Facebook. And so I definitely am happy to have you here. I did a little
That makes me feel like I don't identify with this sort of celebrity kind of image you're giving me. This is very surreal.
well, I know Jamie and I both, we both talk highly about you. We try very hard to do the voices on our commentary as well as we can, but we're like, nobody does it like Jess.
Well, you could argue
Although,
the narrators of the original books did a really good job because obviously I tried to copy a lot of what they did. The producer that I worked with, Matt, um, he when he listened to the original books, he listened to the American production. Um, so not the ones narrated by Stephen Fry that were released over here. I've gone blank on who the narrator was. Um, can you remind me?
I'm totally
Jim
going to edit
Dale? No,
this. Yes, Jim Dale.
Jim Dale. An actor that I grew up watching in Carry On movies and things like that. So I mean, I knew who he was, and he did loads of voices. Stephen Fry on the British version, I didn't think, from what I understand, didn't really go into the voices in quite the same detail. And Matt wanted me to copy the approach that Jim Dale did. So
Interesting.
from the outset, that was my mission, because that's what the producer wanted. And these were the books that I kind of cut my teeth in. I earn a living doing narration now, but I didn't when I recorded these. These were the first books I really did. So this is my learning curve that you're listening to when you listen to these books.
Jamie, I can't hear you.
Sorry. Is that better? Can you hear me now? Am I coming through?
Yes.
Awesome. Sorry. Um, Hearing you do the audio, I love that the characters have voices. It's not just you reading the books to me as if I was back in school and the teacher was reading to me.
Mhm.
I appreciate all the work and the effort you went into to bring the characters to life.
I think it's important that it's not just reading, it is a performance
Mm.
because you want people to enjoy what's there. There is a school of thought that says you need to deliver a fairly cold sort of read so that people can imagine it themselves as if they were reading the pages sort of themselves, where the print doesn't do anything other than it's your brain that interprets those words. So some people think that that's the way an audiobook should be done. I don't think I agree. Well, I obviously don't agree because none of my books are like that. Not even my non-fiction. I put energy into my recordings, not just from the voices and the characterizations that go into it, but the passages, the action, that all needs to be delivered in a way that carries that sense of what's going on. If it's sad, you've got to make it sad for the reader. If it's happy and gleeful, then you deliver that as well. And if it's fast paced, yeah, my reading pace goes up. And if it's somber, it might slow down. There's a whole lot of work into the recording process. And because I mean, I prefer to work with the producer there. Sometimes he's not. Sometimes I work on my own, send it to him, and then get a load of fixes back because he doesn't like something I've done. That's fair enough. But there's two of us usually in the production, and therefore two opinions. And yes, sometimes we argue over what's right and what's wrong. But at the end of the day, I think it's the end product that counts.
Yeah.
And we try always to deliver something that is high quality. We have pretty high production standards when we work together.
So you still work with Matt today then?
Yeah. He's editing my last recording now. A science fiction book, the third of a trilogy that I recorded earlier this year. Matt's doing the editing.
Oh, what is the
Possibly
series?
as we speak. Depending on his commitments. But yeah, no, Matt and I work together. We have a rapport. We work really well together. So I think in my
What's the series?
audiobooks, he's produced everything. It's called Love and War. Hang on, is it? No, it's called The Word
The
Trilogy.
Word.
Love and
Hmm.
War was the second book. The first one was called There Be Dragons. The third one is called The Veil Drawn Aside. And that's the
Hmm.
one that's being worked on now. The first two, There Be Dragons and Love and War, are out on the market right now. And they're written by Anthony D. Brown.
Okay. I
And I
can get
think you'd
that.
like it.
Yeah, I can put that in the links for us so we
Yeah,
can
links down there.
Yeah.
exactly links below. That's
But
awesome.
no, I mean, I do a lot of sci-fi. I do fantasy. Actually, I'll probably do more fantasy than sci-fi. It's my genre to read as well, so it's always fun. I've done quite a bit of kid stuff. Kid stuff, you get the greatest voices. You can really have fun,
Yes.
and we've been in hysterics when we've recorded stuff like that. It is it a job when you're enjoying yourself? I don't know.
What's the old saying? If you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
There is an adage that along those lines, exactly. And when the book is good, it makes life a pleasure to record it.
Mm.
So I used to be
Speaking
a scuba
of,
diving instructor, which is another one of those things where if the job is something you enjoy, you never work a day in your life. But sadly, injury took me out of that one, and I managed to find another not job.
Another not job. Job, not job. Nice.
not to be distracted here, but that's fascinating. Tell me a little bit about that as well. Scuba diving instructor? That's fun.
Yeah, I had hoped that it was going to pay my way around the world so that I could travel and work and pay my way as I went. Unfortunately, about 3 years into that experiment, my back decided scuba diving as a career wasn't going to work for me. I worked for a couple of seasons in Crete in the Mediterranean, which was amazing, but seasonal work really sort of pushed to get as many customers through as you could do in a day just so that they could make their 7 month season work. It was exhausting.
Oof.
So then I found a job in the Canary Islands, um, 12 months of the year, just me, and occasionally my boss would come in. Much more sensible pace. Really enjoyed it. But again, lots of physical work with lifting equipment and things like that. And my back eventually just went.
Mm. Yeah.
And it's something I've struggled with ever since. I have a long history of back problems. I'm 6'5" and probably considerably overweight. Yeah. So
I'm 6'2".
okay, so you probably understand that the world isn't built for people over 6 foot. You have to
No.
bend to every surface, every problem.
Yeah.
Everything's a problem.
Well,
So,
while we're throwing out those numbers, I used to be 5'8.5", but I actually had back surgery last year, and now I'm
okay.
5'8 3/4".
Oh, I kept the same height after my back surgery. They packed in
Really?
some bone graft material to keep everything the same.
Yeah, mine was so bent down, they lifted me up just a little bit. So
Okay.
Nice.
I walked up to my friend and she said, "You're taller." I was like, "Oh, I am? Cool."
Nice.
That was fun. Okay, so you mentioned that the series you're doing now is amazing, and I want to go back in time again to
Okay.
James. And can you tell us
Yeah.
just a little of the story of like how anyone watching who doesn't know, G. Norman Lippert is the one who wrote the James Potter series. We love him. Jamie and I talk about him all the time. But Jess, how did you get involved with George? How did all
How
that
did that
happen?
how did that happen now? Let's see if my memory, hopefully my memory is not playing tricks on me. So I met Matt because a friend wanted a book recorded. Not a professional thing. I think he couldn't afford a professional thing, and I'd never recorded before. So I was interested in doing it, and I wanted to sort of test the waters, as it were. So I went to do this. Matt, if my memory is not flattering me too much, was so impressed by my capabilities that he insisted I had to keep on recording and do other books. Um, I'm making that sound much more dramatic than it was. No, he did say, "You've got a talent, please. I hope you'll do more." And then he mentioned the James Potter books. I'd not even heard of them at that point. So we had a quick look, and I recorded a couple of chapters, if I remember rightly, or at least a bit. And Matt sent it to George to see whether something might happen. And we got a reply. I was actually still down there recording this other book, um, staying with a friend nearby and going over to Matt's every day. And I think I came back the next day. He says, "You're not going to believe it. We've had a reply." And basically, it was really positive. We ended up having a voice call, and George said, "I'm grinning from ear to ear. I really want to go ahead with this. Oh, how do we do it? Where do we go from here?" And I don't remember. Matt was the one that took over as the producer and the one in charge at that point. So yeah, we just started recording, and that was, I think in fact, the book that I'd gone down there to record originally. I think we finished the recording, but before that ever got published, I'd recorded all of the James Potter books that George had written, because that became the next thing. We did reach out to sort of the legal people from J.K. Rowling's legal people for the rights, because there is a copyright clause that says anything that's in the public domain that is printed should be available in audio for accessibility reasons. And that is the clause that enabled us to do this. Talking with them, though, obviously they didn't want us to do it initially. They kept putting little hoops for us to jump through, one of which was I had to be amateur, not professional. One of which were, I can't even remember how they all went out in the end. But that's why everything went on hold. I'd not earned any money at this point, so I'm amateur, got it all done.
Oh,
Then I could
I
go
mean,
Uh, like, yeah, I'm glad that you jump through all those loops because I can't imagine anyone else voicing these books
You have to have a
at
pretty
all.
versatile voice. I mean, yeah, for sure
You,
there are other people that could have done it, but I was in the right place with the right skills at the right time.
time, yeah,
So,
exactly. You nailed it as far as I'm concerned.
thank you very much. I
You're
am
welcome.
delighted to hear that. I still remember the feeling of when I was in the booth recording those, because I did those. The first one I actually did in Matt's, I think the first couple I did in Matt's studio down where he used to live. He had a custom built studio there. And then I built a booth at home, which I'm in right now, although you can't see because of this glorious Yorkshire background behind me. But I built this booth so that I didn't have to travel for 7 hours on my motorbike to get to him. Oh, in fact,
Yeah.
in the early days, it was a train ride and then buses.
Oof.
I got fed up with that. So that's why I
Oh,
got the
yeah, yeah. Don't blame
motorbike.
you.
Yeah, but riding a motorbike in Britain, it's only good when the weather is.
Oh,
Which isn't very often, from my understanding.
Oh, it's not as bad as people like to make out, especially on the east of the country. Because in Yorkshire, I mean that background you can see there, that is today. I took that photograph an hour ago, um, because I couldn't get the James Potter photograph across to my computer in time because I wasn't able to download properly. I managed somehow to get this one in from my phone directly. Um, I don't know why it worked with that one and not the picture, but
well, it's beautiful and it
it's
gives you a
it's
story to tell.
reminding
So
me
I
what
love it.
I'm
It
missing.
does.
It's a glorious day, and I'm in a padded cell.
My mom actually bought me a shirt that said, trying to think how it goes. Basically, I'm a voice actor. I make money by sitting in a padded room all day talking to myself.
That's what I tell people what I do. There was a thing on Facebook. Tell us what you do without telling us what you do. And I said, I sit in a padded cell and talk to myself.
Love it.
And whenever anybody asks me, what do I do? That's what I say. I was at a wedding 2, 3 weeks ago. I was asked, what do I do? That was my answer.
The kind of,
And then, of course, they look at you funny. So then you explain.
Well, I love that you're a natural storyteller, Jess, and I greatly appreciate that. Jamie and I, you mentioned the accents are tricky. And I remember when we first started our commentary, I said, this is going to be fun. Because at the time I was in Mississippi. I grew up in Mississippi. And
Hmm.
so my Southern drawl will come out every once in a while, and I knew Jamie, of course, is in Australia. And so I said, this is going to be fun. We're reading a book set in the UK from an American and an Australian perspective.
Uh-huh.
And so it was a lot of fun. So obviously we thought back to your voices for everyone. I will tell you, Jamie does a pretty good Madame Delacroix. He did it better than me, and she's from New Orleans. So it
why,
just,
thank you very much.
nice.
I'm trying to remember because bearing in mind that Hall of Elders Crossing was the first book that I did back in 2013, 12 years ago. Um, was it Madame Delacroix who had the Cajun accent?
Yes, yes. The
That,
Cajun, like the
yeah,
Louisiana
that
Bayou
that one
type of
taxed
sort
me.
of, yeah. Was
So
she your
to do
hardest
that,
accent to do?
certainly in those days, for sure. What we ended up doing was recording it 3 times. And out of those 3 times, Matt was able to build a composite version that was consistent enough with the accent.
Okay.
Because I mean, some sentences I would nail, others were rubbish, and he had to build them from those three takes, basically.
When I was uh trying to do her voice,
Mm.
I based her accent off of one of the characters from um Pirates of the Caribbean.
Okay. Yeah, I think
Uh,
I remember looking at the same clips on YouTube.
possibly. So yeah, Diodolma, I think her name is. She's Yeah, lives
I
in
remember
a
going
bayou.
onto YouTube and looking up different accents, like going to find Cajun accent, sort of people doing
Mm,
them on their little videos and trying really hard to copy them. It's such a testing thing to go that far out of your comfort zone. But it's great fun when you do get it at the end of the day.
yeah.
Yes. I remember at one point I was watching TV with a friend and she looked at me funny at one point and I looked back and I was like, what? She said, what are you doing? And I didn't realize as I heard someone say something in a certain accent, I would whisper it to myself. And so I was
Hmm.
like whispering the whole time I was watching the show and and I was like, oh, I did not realize I did that out loud, but I constantly am practicing. Like I want to
I
get
do
this
it.
right.
I do it all the time. I have to force myself not to copy the accent of the person I'm talking to a lot of the time. Um, I've had that all my life, and I've got into trouble for suddenly finding myself talking in the accent. As a kid, going on holiday to Ireland, and I'd do an Irish accent, and my parents would just go, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, because they think that you're making fun of
I know.
their accent, and I've even done it myself, like w watching a movie,
Yeah.
or like with my job, I interact with tourists a lot when they're in the area, and there's been some times where I've caught myself about to copy the accent, and
Hmm.
I'm like, don't do that because you might offend them.
I've got to a point where people know that I do accents for what I do.
Yeah.
And if they don't, I make sure I'll tell them. I say, I'm terribly sorry. I do accents all the time as part of my job. I don't even know that I'm changing accents sometimes. I apologize. I don't mean to be rude. It's
Oh, is it
just the way my
work?
brain goes.
I
I
understand. Yeah.
They don't hit me. Mind you, that might be because I'm 6'5".
I was at work once and I said, I was talking to someone and then I said, it was just like, have a great day, darling. And just, and they were like, oh, toodaloo. I don't know what they said to me, but I realized when they responded that I had gone into an
Yeah.
accent and I was like, oh, did not, I was like, that's the first time that's happened.
I I I try to be conscious of it when I'm out and about in the world, but yeah, sometimes it comes and bites me in the ass, as people might say.
My mom could always tell when I was a kid if I was talking to my grandfather on the phone because he was an old ranch farm boy, and
Uh-huh.
I would be on the phone and start, uh, yeah, how y'all doing out there? I'm
For every
glad
vowel
to,
is
Really?
a
it's good to
diphthong.
talk to you. He was always
Yeah.
funny though. At the end of every phone call, he would say, well, I don't know nothing else.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's how he finished the phone call.
I always think it's quite funny. John Barrowman, the actor who was on, was it Dark, was it Darkwood, the spin-off from Doctor Who? And to us, most of the time you see him on television, he's got an American accent, but he's originally from Scotland. And if he goes, he did a TV show where he actually went to talk to his parents, and as soon as he walks in their house, his accent changes to Scottish, and he doesn't know what he's doing it.
That's
It's
amazing.
just, yeah, it's just when he's with his parents, he's Scottish again.
That's fascinating. I remember when we started doing the commentary, Jamie laughed at me because I was doing Hermione and who was, oh my goodness, who's the little girl? Lily? Not Lily.
Well, Lily is one of the little girls in the
Lily's one, but who is going to school first? The older one.
Lucy.
Lucy. Is it Lucy?
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
What
Well,
is
So
it?
I'm trusting you guys. You've read it more
Is
recently
hold
than
on.
me.
uh the
I'm trying to think whose child she is. Hermione's daughter, Rose.
Hermione? Yeah, Rose.
Rose, that's the
Rose.
one.
Okay. So I was doing Rose's accent and I had even Ralph, like I have fun with Ralph, right? And then it
Mhm.
came to Zane, the American, and I was like, ooh, how do I do this? And it's like I couldn't revert back. I couldn't come back to the American accent after I had done the others.
I
Like,
found Zane really, really tricky, but once I'd committed to something, I just had to keep going with it. So for all the American listeners out there who hate it, I'm sorry, but I did my best. What you've actually just hit on something when you're talking about dialogues and you've got characters talking with very different voices, albeit accents or even just tonally, actually switching from one voice to the other while you're on the fly. Sometimes it works, but sometimes the brain just says, nope, I'm glitching. And this, I struggle with some combinations where, for example, Hagrid and maybe it was Rose or somebody, those two voices were so different. The brain just wouldn't let that happen easily, especially if the accents are different. That
I,
one,
I
that one
could
gets me still.
I could imagine swapping between uh Professor Jackson and Madame Delacroix would be
Hmm.
very, very the very different accents.
When
That
you
would be
get
a
into the
challenge.
accent, Madame Delacroix, I struggled with the accent throughout the book and really worked hard. That took several takes all the way. Other accents just flew. They were easy, but even so, the code switching that you've got in dialogues can throw you completely. And I have, what was it I had on a book recently? I think I had to go between Scottish and Welsh, and for some reason that wasn't working. Uh, Scottish and Northern Irish for me is another one that can throw a spanner in the works. Just keeping dialogue going, and then suddenly you go to say the other character, and it comes out with the wrong accent, and you just like ah.
I can't imagine switching between Scottish and anything else. I feel like I would have to have a complete brain shutdown and then come back.
Well, I have a game that I play. Sometimes I just do it without thinking because it's the way my brain is. But sometimes I actually get mischievous, and I will start speaking in a regional accent, British regional accent, wherever it be. And Matt, well, I'm on the phone with Matt talking, and he'll copy me and he'll start replying in the same accent, but then I change. And then a little bit later he changes. So then I change and we go around the country, and it can happen without me consciously doing it. But then sometimes they're like, okay, this could be fun. Let's see how long this will work before he twigs.
That's fun. I love it.
But it's really good to do that. And I like the fact that if I've got one accent going and he's not on that same one, it means that my brain's working on doing the accent and not being influenced by the other one. And it's giving me a workout where I can still do the accent I need to do. And I keep my accents alive for the recording process by just playing with accents all the time. I don't go anywhere without my trusty Kindle because it's my library in a pocket. I think I've got about 500 books in this one, and I call it my breakdown book. So if I break down, which I did on my motorbike about 2 months ago, and I spent 6 hours waiting for the recovery lorry, I had a book, thankfully, to keep me company. Um, but I often read out loud, and I just do different accents, specifically try and work on the ones that I find hardest. American, for example, I'll often try and just if it's not inappropriate for the story, I'll try and read bits in an American accent, but then I'll suddenly switch and go to another. And it's just practice. It just helps me for when I'm in the booth.
When you're doing some dialogue and you've got
Mhm.
multiple different characters, what method do you use to make sure as you're reading, you know which accent to use? Is it all just in your head, or do you have like some markings, or is there any tools
Um,
that you use to make sure that this character is this accent, that character is that accent,
I've
without getting them
experimented
confused?
with markings so that I can highlight who's talking according to a color or something like that. Um, it can make page turning really slow on whatever electronic device I'm using, so I'm not a big fan of it. I obviously make sure I read the book cover to cover before I even start a recording. And I usually sit down with a spreadsheet next to me and I start entering every character and then adding every explicit piece of information I can find about that character, so that then when it comes to working out what voice is going to work, I know, okay, they're 90. I'll know if if we've been told where they're from, I'll know that. Otherwise, so if I'm going to invent an accent for somebody, I don't want to find out on the last page it says suddenly they're Welsh and I've been doing them as Australian for the last sort of 150
Yeah,
pages.
big
That would
difference
be
there.
exactly. Though I've never done an Australian character in a book. I've done some recording for George on his podcast series where I narrated the story as an Australian boat captain. But I've never done an Aussie character in a book yet.
Interesting. That's fun.
I
We don't
love
all
playing
sound
with accents. I've done it all my life.
we
This
don't
was
all sound like Crocodile Dundee.
no, unless I mean this guy actually he was a little bit like that kind of, he was a tourist boat captain.
Yeah.
I gave him a little bit more of an extreme accent because he was an old timer.
So speaking of accents, Jamie, do you remember what you told me is your favorite accent in James Potter that Jess does?
McGonagall.
I heard I was, because you sent me the link and I was listening and I was like, you like McGonagall. That was fun. Obviously based on Maggie Smith, and because I'd
Yeah.
obviously heard all of the way she'd done it. But you just try and do
Yeah,
it
you're
justice.
bang on with your McGonagall. All right. All right. Hearing you, I'm like, yeah, that's how I hear McGonagall in my head when I'm reading. You know?
Okay.
It's
So
sorry.
I was going to say we have to have an example if possible. If it's not too much pressure, we'd love to hear you.
Oh my God. On the spot.
On
No.
the
the spot.
spot.
How did she go? It was something along the lines of James Sirius Potter. No running in the corridors, if you please.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Something
Well
like
done.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, excellent.
Beautiful.
Very well done. I love it. Oh my goodness. That makes me, I'm fangirling again.
Yeah.
Oh, that
I
was
did
so much
enjoy
fun.
doing those books. There were
Did you
so many characters.
have a favorite one to voice?
That was just fun. I
Just
wasn't
fun.
at that stage. I was just reveling in the fact that I was recording something new, but that was part of the Potterverse in a way, even though it wasn't official. Sort of, it was fan fiction, but I
Yeah.
was flattered to be able to do it, and I loved it. I'm a bit older than your average person, I suppose, that grew up with James Potter. I came back from my stint in the Canary Islands where I'd been scuba diving. And I've always been an avid reader. I never go anywhere without a book in my back pocket. And I was thinking, I need a book. I'm running out of books that I don't know what to do. And then I heard people talking about this series. I was like, but it's kids' book. No, not just for kids. I was like, well, okay, I'll give it a go. And basically fell in love with the whole sort of the book series. Then I fell in love with the movies. They're not exactly the same. Lots of critics will
Yeah.
criticize them one over the other, but I always try and separate the two and say, well, they're different genres. They have to make changes for that genre to work. Accept it. It's not going to be a carbon
Yeah.
copy.
Yeah. If they
I
did
have
do
to
it as a
tell
carbon
myself
copy,
that for the
it'd
Wheel
be
of Time at the
hours and
moment.
hours long.
Yeah. I've read the whole book series, 14 book series of The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, and finished off by Brandon Sanderson,
Yes.
and absolutely adored the books. Yeah, there were some moments where it drags a little bit, but I just pushed through those, and I'm so glad I read them all. Then, of course, the TV series is coming out, or is out, and they're now on season 3. And almost immediately it's like, oh my God, this is so different. Can I cope? And I just thought, I have to disassociate one from the other. This is a different thing based on. It's not
Yeah.
a carbon copy, so that
So
I
that
can
was
enjoy
based
it for
on.
its
Yeah.
own, in its own merit, for its own thing, basically. And I think that that applies to anything that's been written that then gets converted to another media.
It,
So
it would be strange. Like, I know it'd probably never happen, but if they were to turn James Potter books into movies, if Warner Brothers would sign up on the
mhm.
deal on the agreement, it'd be interesting to see what changes and how things would be different from the books, and whether or not I could cope with that.
I I think there would have to be some differences, but from what's written, because each book is they're so long.
I agree.
I mean,
Oh yeah, I know that. I know that there'd be some cuts made. They'd probably change who said what, who does what.
and that
Um,
could be some license where there's something really important that, or it's really sort of key to the story, but that whole scene maybe needs to be cut, so they move that little snippet into
mm,
another scene where it wasn't, so they can keep that idea. And those are the bits that the purists, could be you, could be me, we're going, that's not what happened in the book. But it takes some mental discipline to
yeah,
just accept that, okay, they wanted that bit, but they couldn't have that scene. I understand why they've done it. I'll accept it.
yeah. Like when
Doesn't mean I
they
want to.
change um certain scenes, like with how Harry gets the gillyweed in the
Right.
Yeah.
fourth. So it's a bit different to how it's done in the book.
And I mean, it's even longer since I read those original books. So that was 2002 or three that I read the initial
Yeah. So you read the books
Harry.
first before you saw the movies?
Oh, of course. I mean, yeah, if the book had to be out before the movie came. I read the books immediately. I even went straight to the bookshop. I had them pre-ordered and got them the day they were published at midnight.
Yes.
I joined a queue for one of them. The last
Uh,
film was released in the UK on the 15th of July. And the local cinema, I was living in Cambridge at the time because I was still a student at Cambridge University at that point, trying for a PhD. It didn't work. um, but there was a screening at 12:01 on the 15th of July. Now, the 15th of July happens to be my birthday, and I got a friend, and we were like, right, we're going. We're going to this. It's the start of my birthday celebrations. We're going to the 12:01 screening. The number of
nice.
people that were there in uniform with their Gryffindor scarves and their Ravenclaw scarves, and because Cambridge colleges have gowns, people were wearing their academic gowns to represent the Hogwarts robes and things like that. I mean, it was quite fun. We didn't, I'll be honest. We were too grown up for that.
I I would have.
Me
Yeah, no,
too.
that's cool.
I started with the movies.
Okay.
So
You're
I
saying that
saw
like you're almost ashamed.
sort of, kind of, sort of. Like I saw the very first movie on VHS. That's how
Okay.
old I am.
Nice.
Me and a mate of mine went and saw the second movie in a local cinema on a laugh,
Okay.
just for something to do.
Yeah.
And I watched them, and then I'm like, okay, I need to know what happens next.
Yeah.
So I started with the third book. That was the first book I read,
Oh, funny.
Okay.
and uh, I finished that book, read the fourth book, but I borrowed it from the public library, but it was booked out. I had to reserve.
Okay.
So I got that and then finished that. The fifth book wasn't out yet, and I went back to the beginning and read it, and yeah, rest is history.
That's
I'm trying to
funny.
remember when did the first film come out?
2001, I think.
Okay,
I
so
know
I
the
was actually
first.
Research.
still, yeah, I was still abroad at that point, but I hadn't heard of James of Harry Potter at that point. because I was abroad, but I was on a little island in the middle of the Atlantic that, these things didn't reach, especially when you were living. I just used to go home and listen to my own music that I'd, on CD. Downloads didn't exist. I didn't have access to what was new.
Yeah.
Seems like a different generation or a different life back then.
Well, when the first movie was released, I was 16.
Yeah, I was a bit older than that.
I was in college. I had just I was almost about to graduate for my teaching degree, and my
Okay.
partner at the time, she said, "You are never going to be a real teacher unless you've read the Harry Potter books." And she kept trying to convince me. And you know how she convinced me to do it? She said, "What if you just read it out loud to me?" And of course that hooked me in because I was already like
Yep.
loving the narration thing. And so I was like, okay. So I start reading it, and of course I'm hooked. And I remember coming into the room one day when she was reading the seventh book. We did the midnight thing as well, like pick up the book.
Uh-huh.
And I said just hello or something, and she jumped and she turned around. She said, "There's Death Eaters everywhere." And she was so in the book. It was really funny. But yeah, so that's how I got into them. And you touched on something earlier. I remember when I interviewed George on this channel, one of the things he said was he and his wife, Jael, were listening to the books because their friends basically said you have to read these books. And so they just went straight to the audiobook and listened to it together. And then at the end, he just felt empty, and he's like, I need to know what's next.
I'm absolutely the same. I was the same with the Potter books. I'm the same with any series that I read. The characters become my friends. They become my
Yes.
family in a way. And when
Yeah.
the series comes to an end, I grieve their loss because their
Mm,
loss is real.
mm,
When I read the Wheel of Time series, which was last year, I bought the whole bundle on Kindle. And so I got a sample first. So the first book was in the sample because it's a percentage of the book that you buy. Therefore, I had a book and a half in before I had to buy it. I was like, I was hooked. And then I bought the bundle and I read on and on and on. And months later, I finished. It felt like months. It was probably weeks because 14 books. And I was tearful.
mm,
I'd lost these people in my life. And I've done the same with other series I've read, Aragon books. I've done it with all kinds of series where I just feel bereft because I've lost these characters from my life. And I totally understand George's motivation for not wanting the story to end. And he had the skill to make this
I,
series a reality. And I'm so grateful to him for that because I think these are
Me
great
too.
books.
yes.
They are. What I like most about these books is that the characters are still true to their Harry Potter counterparts for the characters that carry over.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be any drastic changes. There's a few things that are different to what we know today. But it's very in the same vein as Harry Potter. It feels like this could just be the continuation. It's not like
Mm,
I'm going and reading something where uh Harry's now like an overaged pencil pusher, and
Yeah.
he's in an office somewhere, or I don't know. Some changes in some of the fanfics that are out there are pretty great. Some of them are pretty strange, but this one feels more true to heart.
mhm,
I thought the way he continued the story seemed really natural.
Yeah,
There wasn't a sort of a disjointing style, it just flowed naturally together. And yeah, there are some things that are, I suppose George's style is not the same as J.K. Rowling's, not 100%. There are some Americanisms in there,
Yes,
some of
there is.
which may have disappeared in the audio version. There
Hmm.
were some that I couldn't do. If it was in dialogue, it's I'd leave them if they were in the narration. But if it was dialogue and it was a British character and it was a big Americanism, I would I'd have to just make it more British. If it was Zane
Yep,
speaking, I could leave it in because he's American. That's absolutely
exactly.
fine. But it really depended on the situation.
Where's Q007?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I like when he's like, I'm James Potter, and he's like, I'm Zane, whatever,
Yeah.
That's
So I mean,
fun.
And then
there
you've got
will
the
be
other.
examples where I missed stuff, I'm sure. But no, that was our approach was we didn't want to change it too much, but there were times where we thought that's not what James would say. So
Interesting.
Do you have an example? Can you give an example?
no, I can't
Because
on the top of my head,
I
but
I haven't really come. I'm gonna have to. I'm actually doing a re-listen of um, book two at the
okay.
moment. Um, so I'll have to pay attention.
Well, there is no plans in terms of studio time, or not studio time, but production time yet. It's not been slotted in. But Matt and I have talked about, the production quality that we did on the Potter books back when we recorded them were the best we could do at the time. But we actually think that could probably be remastered and
Hmm.
given a little bit of a tweak. There has been discussion between Matt and myself that it might happen. It depends
Okay.
on whether studio time can be found in between other projects. And also, yeah, I guess in a way it depends if there's interest in such a product being made available. But yeah, that could happen. So I will be listening probably again to, because I haven't listened to my audio for a very long time. Um, I, I've heard actors
It
in
holds.
when they're
It
being
holds.
interviewed on Graham Norton and things like, yeah, but this was a long time ago. I can't remember. And I was like, really? Now I get it,
You
because
get it?
you do move on.
Yeah.
You don't forget totally, but you move on, and the little details, you can't remember everything. You've got to, there's only so much brain cell available.
Right. Things fall out eventually. Yes.
Oh, in my head, it's like a sieve.
Oh my goodness.
There
So
were
Jamie, we
when you ask me about things I can remember, I can say there were moments where Matt and I would be in hysterics over the way I'd read something, because I read it. I read it in a certain way. Maybe it's just because I've got a dirty mind somehow. I don't know, but I'd read something and Matt would be like, "We can't do it
Oh,
like that," and it was just like, "Oh my God, no."
we we have communicated some
Hmm.
of the things that um, some of the conversations that some characters have,
Yeah,
and we're like, that there is a definitely a double entendre there.
there are lots in there. There's
There are
lots of
lots.
double
There are
entendre.
lots of
Yeah,
hidden. Yeah,
and I don't know
yeah.
whether they're deliberate or not,
I
but
actually talked to George about one of them one time, and he was like, I did not even realize that. And Jamie
no,
and I in our video, I was like, I really need to check, what I'm allowed to put on YouTube if I say it's for
well,
kids or
that
it's
is the reason why I'm being vague now. And if people want
yeah.
to know more,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, they're going to have to go and find the books and
Go
find
go
them.
read the books.
Yes.
Exactly right, because there are, and knowing that they're unintentional makes it even funnier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's like when you watch a show as a kid or a movie as a kid, completely innocent, and then you watch it back as an adult, and you're like,
Yeah,
"Mom, why did you let me watch this whole? I know what that means."
yeah. I
Funny.
remember watching cartoons, and what's the little Speedy Gonzales?
Yep.
And I was sitting watching, my niece, who was 3 at the time, was sitting watching the television, and I was sort of in the room at the same time. And there's Speedy Gonzales singing along to La Cucaracha, the music, only singing, and the lyrics were the original lyrics, and they are not safe for children.
No.
And I'm like, this is in a cartoon. This is incredible. I had a friend who was in my house, and a friend was visiting, and we'd come up for the weekend. My brother was there with his daughter, and my friend looked at me and said, "Did we just hear that right?" I was like, "Oh my God." And this is broadcast.
So funny.
Times were different.
Things that slip through the censors, eh?
Yeah.
So
Did
logistics question. Oh, Jamie, go ahead.
no, you go.
Oh, I don't want to change topic.
It's I was just going to ask if you had a favorite conversation between characters.
Ooh.
Favorite conversation between characters. I think I mean, that's really hard, especially given the amount of time that's passed since all of this happened. But I seem to remember there were some, I can't remember exact conversations, but there were some quite touching conversations between Harry and James
Mm.
that I
Mm-hmm.
remember, where basically Harry came in, because Harry is in this series is obviously more of a bit part. He's the adult now, so
Yeah.
he came in to give James a little bit of a sort of grounding, and bring him down to earth, and a bit of reality. And I found those quite good.
Mm.
The, because Harry in the original books had such wild adventures, he understood James, and he reined him in a little bit with some logic rather than through punishment and through sort of force. And I quite appreciated that approach.
Yes. And I love how George just seamlessly brings the adults into the world. And for Harry, I mean, this isn't much of a spoiler because it's in the very beginning, but to have him be an international, or he's as Zane said, your dad's the head of the wizard police, I think he said.
Yeah.
And just that makes sense for his character. That's where he came from. That was his desire. He wanted to, be a leader in that sense, and everybody knew who he was, so it made sense that that's where he went with his life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And having the opportunity because of that to bring in the American part and have all the jokes between
Yeah.
Zane and James and Ralph, and just that whole dynamic was just so much fun. And I'll tell you, one of my favorite parts that he threw in was when the Americans are talking to James. No, which direction does it go? I think it's that way. Yeah, they call him Cornelius.
Yeah.
Because they're
Yeah.
making fun of him, and
Yeah.
Cornelius Fudge.
Cornelius Fudge.
It's a reference back to him because everybody knows by now he was an idiot, all that. And so I just think that's so funny how he just weaves that in so well.
Well, I mean, that's something I think that George excels at. I like the fact that we've got Petra Morgenstern as a character from the James Potter books, but then we go on to her own book, Girl on the Dock, and I love the way that weave together. Normally, I wouldn't
Nice.
naturally have narrated Girl on the Dock because that's sort of a leading female character, which doesn't really logically suit my voice, but it just, there was no way I wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
Originally, actually, Matt did try somebody else, but she didn't. I don't think she had the time to do it. And then Matt said, "Will you?" I was like, "Yeah, of course I'm going to."
That's a good.
It's amazing.
So glad you did.
I wouldn't want.
Yeah.
I wouldn't ever say no. And the ruins of Camelot, obviously
Yeah.
giving us a hint of the origins, like going back all that way into history. but they're all linked. They're linked into the James Potter books, and the way he
Every book.
weaves those little ideas, I think that's one of his skills,
I,
one of his
I
Yes.
strong
actually
points.
I actually have Rules of Camelot as well. I
Oh yeah,
have not read it
as
yet.
that was Girl on the Dock, though, wasn't it?
That's
That there
shocking,
is,
Jamie.
I know that there is Girl on the Dock.
Yeah,
My backlog is full.
Yes. The
So
TBR. Do you
I
guys use
it, yeah,
TBR as your
TBR.
acronym?
Yeah, I
I have a, a, a huge shelf in my bookcase of books, and it's bursting at the seams, books that are waiting to be read, the
Yeah.
TBR shelf. And I have a very strict policy that that shelf should never be empty.
Yep.
Nice.
There will be time for me to read these books. I just need another 483 years, and then I'm sure I'll get there. Um,
It
that's not even allowing for the ones I'm obviously going to buy in the coming days,
yeah.
but hey ho,
I
that's
keep
optimism for you.
adding to my backlog, but I keep just reading the same books or listening to the same books. You'd be surprised at how many times I've actually just, you know what, just go back to Hogwarts, you know?
Mhm.
I, there are certain series that I will read again and again. The James Potter books, I would love to. And having this conversation with you guys today has made me want to read them again. So it's going to happen. I may even have to go whole hog and get some printed, because I just read them on a digital copy last time.
Yes,
You've got printed
you've got
copy.
it.
Yeah, I'm quite
I
jealous,
do.
actually.
I have all five books
Yeah,
printed. This is actually my second copy of the first book because it has the original style, the newer cover art.
the, yeah,
Um, I need to get the next three books redone so that I have a full set with the same style cover.
yeah.
So yes, and yeah, I've
No,
got Go
no,
on
I
the
must
Dock. I've
admit,
got the Rules of
I'd quite
Camelot.
like to reread these now, because talking with you guys has reminded me of really how much I've forgotten. And I think
Mm.
that's a shame, because these books are worth celebrating.
Uh,
I won't listen. I'll listen to the audio if we do manage to get a remastering process going on. Um, I know we've talked about it, but it's something we want to do. It's just finding time. But I will
Sure.
read the books, the print versions of them, probably quite soon now that you've put it in my head. But I've got loads of books in my bookshelf that they're not on the TBR shelf, but they are going to be read again. I've got the whole Terry Pratchett Discworld collection that I picked up over the years. So they're a mixture of
mm.
sort of paperbacks and hardbacks and whatever I could find in the bookshop the day it was due to be printed or released, and
I
I could never wait for them.
I have the at the time I had the full collection of the Percy Jackson and then the Heroes of Olympus
Okay.
books and the Kane Chronicles, which is the Egyptian gods. Similar
I don't
story
know them.
there. They're from the same author, but they deal with the Egyptian gods.
Okay.
I've also got the three books of Magnus Chase, Norse gods, all in the same universe. All in the
Right.
same universe. I've read almost all of them, and there's more still coming out. And I'm like, I might just wait for it to finish and then start it over and go again.
Yeah, it's always hard if if the book's freestanding, it doesn't matter if there are others, I
Yeah.
guess. But it's if there's a series going on, I've got to a point there are to make the obvious one is the Waiting for Winds of Winter from George R. R. Martin, book 6. I've been waiting for that book since 2011,
I have
and
the
I've got
box set.
to
Haven't read them yet.
no, I've read everything that was there, but I'm drumming my fingers on the table, wondering when it's going to come out. And
If it's gonna come out.
I'm not, yeah, well, if, and I'm got to getting to a point where I might be belligerent and say, well, there's no point reading it anymore. I've forgotten all the other stuff now anyway. Um, I know lots of people that I've spoken to who get really upset when series get dropped. and they've invested so much time. So I do understand the philosophy of wait till the series is written and
That
then invest in the books.
yeah. Uh, I have another fan fiction I read, which the author has gone AWOL, and it's probably not going to get finished. And I'm like, this was really good, and it was getting to a really good part. The next book, because there's 4 books out for it. The next one was going to be, we know parts of what happens in this book already.
No, no.
So
Well,
yeah,
Matt, I'm going to deliberately not say the name of this series because Matt and I are still working on trying to get in touch with the author because we'd actually like to do some recording, and we don't want that being stolen away from us if there's
okay.
an opportunity. But there is a series of books out that we're trying to reach out to the author, and they've just disappeared. They're not responding. There's just no contact whatsoever,
Oh
and it's
no.
so
This
frustrating.
is a mainstream books. This is fan
Oh,
fiction books. This is
it's been published. Yeah, we just
published books. Yeah,
can't seem to get in touch
yeah.
with people or get any
The
responses, and it's quite frustrating. So,
yeah,
Oh.
yeah. I feel you because I've tried to get in. I've actually had communications with the author of this book series that I really would like him to finish.
mhm.
It's the Tom Riddle's School Days.
Huh.
Okay.
Um, so if you're out there, Dave, come back. Um, um, the first 4 books that he wrote was great, and the 5th book, we sort of have an idea of what happens because it's set at Tom's 5th year, which is Hagrid's 3rd year, and we know parts of the story of what happens in that year.
Oh, yeah.
So
Interesting.
I was going to say I can imagine, I can picture the one event I'm thinking of that happened then. So yeah.
Oh, this is going to sound out of the park, but this is from earlier. Just you started mentioning the houses. So I'm really curious, what Hogwarts house would you claim to be part of?
I Somebody reminded me actually because a group of us all went to the Universal Studios Harry Potter experience for a friend's birthday some years ago, and I remember we were doing the questionnaire online, but I couldn't remember what it was, either Hufflepuff or Ravenclaw. That's all I could remember, but I couldn't find it. I tried with my email, nothing worked. So I thought, well, I'll just go in with another email. I don't know which one it was, but I'll try one. And the one definitive result that I've got puts me in Ravenclaw.
Really?
Yeah, which is
Welcome,
the same as my
welcome to
daughter.
Yeah.
My
I was
daughter's
going back
Ravenclaw.
and forth between Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff for you. I was leaning toward Hufflepuff, but yeah, we have a Slytherin in the house. Wow, as we speak.
I think I think I saw on because I started watching the first video of the link that you sent me, and I did notice there was a green snake in the corner of the picture.
Yes. Yeah,
But no, apparently I might have been Hufflepuff because a friend of mine thought that she remembered I was Hufflepuff, but I didn't because there was so much going on that day. But I did it again, and it came out definitively Ravenclaw, and my daughter is Ravenclaw, and so that's what we are. We're both Ravenclaws.
you're a
which
hat stall. Is that what I'm hearing?
which Alma Aleron house would you be in, you reckon?
Good question.
Oh, I can't even remember the names of them now.
Uh,
Zombie? Go, Jamie,
zombie,
you got this.
zombie, Igor, pixie, werewolf, Bigfoot, and
I can't
The
remember.
snake? No, that's a different thing.
I can't remember the sort of characteristics of them all.
Vampire?
vampire house. That's it. Vampire house.
Yeah.
That's the house that
I know
George
I
makes fun of.
yeah, I remember I feel like the Bigfoots were kind of like the Hufflepuff-ish
Yeah,
group, right?
they were like everyone that was left over goes into Bigfoot house.
Right.
Um, uh,
Pixie was
the
very girly, I think.
the
Pixie?
girly girls, yeah, girly girls, and the effeminate males and look in the mirror, etc. Igor were like the nerds.
That's
Um,
appropriate.
It's not inappropriate to
the
be an ego.
Zombie House, they were like your I don't want to say slackers. They're not slackers, but they're jokesters, they're pranksters.
Yeah,
They're like they're
George and
very,
Fred
very, very smart, but they're just like, you know, fun
Weasleys.
pranks. Weasley,
I'd
yeah,
probably be
yeah.
somewhere between an Igor and a Bigfoot from everything you've just said so far. If I
Werewolf
wasn't
is
quite
the
nerdy enough.
jocks. Werewolf, they're your typical jocks,
Okay, that's not
your
me.
athlete, very military style.
Definitely not me.
Um, then Vampire House, they're sort of like your goth people.
Okay.
Huh.
As you can see from the way I look, I'm not typically a gothic
Mm.
kind of. That's not my style.
I could see myself being either uh, Bigfoot or Igor.
That's where
I think that's
where
where
I,
I would fit in.
yeah, I think that's where I would fit probably in one of those two.
Is there any, are any of those like, none of them are really Scream Slytherin, do they?
I
No.
think, well, none really. Yeah, I think werewolf would probably be more Slytherin than anything because they sort of aren't afraid to bend the rules in their favor. Yeah, they're the first. They'd be the first ones to report of any wrongdoing by anyone else.
Yeah.
Okay. First thing I thought was, it's sort of exciting, isn't it?
Hmm.
Breaking the
I was just
rules.
thinking because you were saying that the werewolves were military, and of course, being in America, that made me think boo-rah. But of course, it would be oh-rah.
Ooh, ooh, um, yeah, because their head of house is Professor Jackson, and he's like
Yeah.
it's a
Mm.
two-star military general in the
Yeah, very, very severe or strict.
Yeah, that'd probably be the
yeah.
closest one, but yeah. But I'm glad
And
that George didn't assign, I mean, first of all, there were more than four houses, and I don't
Mm.
think they really, did they even call them houses? I think it was something, it might have been something different. The sorting ceremony is different.
Yeah,
Everything's different.
it is. Everything is very, very different, as you would expect.
well, I mean, the school
Um,
experience in America compared to, I mean, Hogwarts is kind of based on a old-fashioned public school. And I went to sort of, I had part of my education was private. We did have houses, you know, I I
Prefects are a
I
thing, are they not?
prefects are a
Right.
thing. I was never one. Uh, I got punished by them. So yeah, I'm aware of prefects being a thing. But yeah, I was at boarding school, so that whole idea of dormitories and lights out and having
Wow.
a dining room or dining hall that you go to, we called it the refectory or the refectory. Um, that's all very real. So I definitely, there was a resonance there for me.
As an American at the time, we have kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and up through there. And uh, when I heard first year, second year, and he was 11 and all this, I thought she had made it up. I didn't realize
No,
it
that's
was an actual system.
I don't get them because in the UK now it goes from first year up to 12th, something like that. And
Okay.
I never know what's what. I get so
Yeah.
confused. I've got grandchildren now who are going, and I can't keep track of what year they're in because it makes no sense. But no, when you go from primary school, you obviously have your first, second, third, fourth, whatever in primary school. Then you go to secondary school, you start again. First, second, third, fourth, fifth. And then fifth year would be, sorry, fourth year would be, I guess, GCSEs. And then we'd have A levels for the final 2 years. So the owls,
Yeah.
I did O levels
O
before
levels.
GCSEs now. So I'm that old. I did O levels at 16 or just before I was 16. And the owls sort of resonate with that. And then advanced wizarding is for the A levels, advanced levels that you do when you're 18 in this
The
country.
newts.
So that's your
Yeah.
newts.
Yeah.
See, yeah, I think over in Australia it's very similar to America. Like we have first year of it's a little bit different because we have kindergarten, which I think you probably call preschool because you go there when you're like 4.
We have play
Yeah.
school.
Play school.
Play school. I love
Um,
it.
Yeah.
that's a TV show in Australia.
I know it used to be a TV show over here as well.
So kindergarten, or in some other states I do it differently, but in my state it's kindergarten. Then you start reception, which is like first year primary school.
Yeah.
So you're like 5 or 6. Then from there you go into year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5.
And that is probably appropriate for now in the UK. My sister works in sort of that sort of level of education. So yeah, it's preschool and reception year, and that's very similar now.
And
I love
then
how welcoming it sounds. Reception, like we're receiving, we're
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
first go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then high school is year 7 to 12.
Okay.
I had a really funny, this is not every system here, but in Mississippi, in my town in Mississippi, I was in elementary school from kindergarten, which for us is like 5 years old. Kindergarten through 5th grade was elementary. And then I went to middle school for 6th and 7th. And then I went to junior high for 8th and 9th. And then I was technically a high schooler in 9th grade, but then we actually physically went to the high school for 10th through 12th. So it's mine. I tell even people
It just
here
sounds
about
confusing.
that. And
Too
they're like,
many
that's weird.
schools. Too many
Yeah.
schools.
I mean, yeah, I went to the local primary school when I was, 5? And then at 9, I went to a prep school, which is private sector, preparatory school, prep school,
Mhm.
until I was 12. And then 13, I went to the public school. But then at the end of my O levels, I went to a state sixth form college. So I had loads of schools too, don't worry. And I worked it out. It's exactly half private, half state.
Oh, funny.
So yeah, same number of years in each bit. So
Well, I realized as an adult, I was getting to about the 4th or 5th year being at the same company, and I was getting like itchy. I was like ready to do something different. And I realized I had never been in a school more than 4 years. I had never been in a place
uh-huh.
more than 4 years throughout my, school career, I guess you'd say. And so I would get to that 4 or 5 year mark and like be ready for something new. And I was like, okay, I get
Your
it.
school experience carried over into your working experience in that you
Exactly.
expect it to change.
Yeah. I was like, okay, what's next? Here we go.
Yeah. Well, this job narrating, and I'm also, as you saw, an EFL teacher. I have a few students that I teach English to online. Little way of earning a few extra pounds, as it were.
Yeah.
But I've got a background in languages, and my degree is languages. My master's was translation.
What a wonderful background for a narrator.
I think it helps. And the fact that in a British sense, to you, I probably don't have a neutral accent because I probably have this sort of very definitive British accent, but it's fairly neutral. It's RP, it's not regional. Because partly because part of my education was private, but it's really down to my mum, who, when I was a kid, if I came home from school with a hint of the local accent, I would get an elocution lesson from her.
Oh,
Interesting.
really?
In
Wow.
her mind, because she comes from, it's an older mentality. In those days, on the BBC, for example, all the presenters had RP accents. You didn't hear regional accents. So my mum's thought process was, if I'm going to get anywhere in this world, she wants me to have every advantage that I can have, one of which was learn to speak what she called this sort of neutral BBC English.
Interesting.
So
That's so
this is
funny
my
because
natural accent, but it means that I'm not trying to overcome a regional accent when I drop into another one. And I
right.
think that helps because I've got a kind of neutral base. So
I love that. It's so funny because I grew up obviously in the deep South in America, and that is a very, that's an accent most people understand. They're like, oh, you're from the South, But as a child, at some point, I realized that most of the country kind of looked down on people who had that accent because they thought they were not as smart as everyone else, and I started trying to clean it up. I would notice words that I would say and I would change it, and eventually now I'll meet people from all over the country and they're like, "Where are you from?" And I said,
Yeah.
"Mississippi." I can't tell, I'm like, "Thank you." I mean, that sounded bad.
No, but I
But
get what you're saying. We all grow up with preconceptions. They're not just from our parents. Some might come from parents, some might come from just the environment we grow up in. We've always sort of got these sort of preconceptions that get put upon us. And I think everybody will have some accent from their home country where the joke is that people from there are slower or more stupid. And it took me with some accents, I still had that preconception. I knew it was false, but it was still there. And then I spent some time at some of the best universities I could get to, Cambridge and Imperial College, and I came across people in those sort of university environments that had these so-called accents that you sort of stereotype as being somebody who's stupid or slow. None of these people would be at these universities if that were true.
True.
And some of the brainiest people I've had the pleasure of meeting had those accents. So I know it's a myth, and it's just misnomer to say, oh, people from that accent, they've got to be, or with that accent, they have to be really slow and stupid. I know it's rubbish because I've witnessed it, but you still can't shake it, and you still can't help if somebody says, oh, this character is a little bit slow, your brain still wants to go to that accent as a stereotype to
Right.
to give that character that effect in the book. So I'm saying this now so that if anybody's ever listening to books that I've written, I apologize if I've offended anybody with any accent. I have never intended to. I just try and give each character an accent that suits their personality. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean that I'm trying to paint them with a brush
Mm.
or anything like that. And it doesn't mean if you don't like an accent that I've done, because some people will say that accent's not a really good one. Perhaps I was having an off day, or perhaps I just can't do that accent really well. That doesn't mean that that isn't that person, that character's voice. That's how they sound. It might not be the perfect, let's say, Australian or American accent, because I'm not Australian or American. I can't guarantee that what I do is perfect because I've never been to America. I've never been to Australia. I've never had enough money for the airfare.
Um,
um, so I give that character a voice that might be influenced by, but that's their accent, not yours if you're listening.
I hear you
Understood.
because, you know, when I think of English accents, right, two movies come to mind straight away. Just boom,
Hmm.
straight away. It's either Mary Poppins,
Yeah.
one with Julie Andrews, not the new
Yep.
one,
Julie.
I've not seen the new
uh,
one.
Me neither.
or 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 Oliver Twist.
Okay.
Okay. I also think of My Fair Lady, I think. I wash my hands and my face before I come, I did. She
Yeah,
comes in
but
like that, and then they train her voice.
Well, I suppose
I mean, she had a British accent, but that was not her British accent at all. So that was, yeah, equally false.
Right.
Um, she had sort of a very well-spoken British accent, even though she was Belgian, I think, by birth.
Wow.
Um,
Interesting.
I think her father was British, and she wasn't overly fond, or they were. If I've read the right thing, she was estranged from her father, so there wasn't a great love of him or the British identity. But she was half English, but born in Belgium, if I remember rightly.
Hmm.
Um, but her accent was very well spoken English. So to do a take on a Cockney accent that's as false as it gets. That's Dick Van Dyke doing a Cockney accent. It wasn't right for her either.
Right, right. I think it's interesting to listen to that movie and how they tried to train her voice into like what your mother did, like you need to speak this certain way, and um I love how she comes in at the end after the whole transformation and uses the old accent to get his attention back, like
Yeah.
remember me, remember who I am, that kind of
Remember
thing. And
where I've come
um,
from.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
You know, I feel
Actually,
like, yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like I narrated a book called The Lost Sigil. It's the Lost Sigil series, and it's called Insurrection by uh, Raymond Beckham and Darius Cook. And so that one was my longest project. All the other ones have been pretty small. And so during that, though, I worked with the author on the accents for the different characters because he didn't have in his mind, accents specifically for them, but they were from different regions of his map. And so we worked together and I said, can I like kind of divide the map and then we can talk about the accents? And he said, yeah. So that was a lot of fun, first of all,
Mm.
but also one of them, as I was reading the book, this one character he was just a gentleman, he was just like so sweet and so easygoing. And I said, can I give him a Southern American accent? And he was like, yeah. I said, I feel that, that vibe of just gentlemanly, oh, I'll open the door for you. And I felt good about that because I was like, I feel like so many movies, if you hear a Southern accent, a lot of times it's that police officer who is completely racist and all that,
Yeah.
and in this
The Clampets.
case, my first thought was he's a gentleman. I want him to have a Southern accent. So that felt good. I was like, I feel like I'm redeeming it a little bit.
I mean, that's one of the things, going back to what I was saying earlier about when I pre-read a book, I create a spreadsheet a lot of the
Good
time
idea.
and put down every explicit piece of information about each of the people that are sort of in all the characters. Then I also add my impressions of what that character might sound like based on how my own feelings. Just like you've just said, I felt that character was a gentleman. I would do similar things. Sometimes the way a dialogue is written, it's like I can see that coming with a Scottish accent.
Mm,
So that, even though it doesn't say Scottish in anything, the way those words are written, that just seemed to be right. Or it could be Irish or Welsh or whatever. And I make my notes in another column of my spreadsheet. And then this is my ideal scenario. I then want to have a chat. I send it to the author and say, let's have a chat and go
yeah.
through this to see if you're happy with this, if you think there's anything sort of that I need to add. Once that's done and I've got feedback on everything, I then record little snippets just taken from where they are in the book. So it's actual dialogue from the book, and I record it and I put it into a folder, and then I'll send access to that folder to the author and say, have a listen to all of these. Tell me if you like or dislike
Mm.
anything.
I love
The
that.
other
That's a
thing is
great strategy.
some authors they hear the voice in their head when they're
Mm,
writing. Others
Hmm.
don't. So I'll always ask an author, how do you hear these characters? So
mm,
can you tell me what your feelings are? And if there's anything that the author can give me, I'll put that in to that character's voice. If it's at all possible. I've had authors turn around to me when I've asked that question and say, no, I don't hear them. And then I've sent them if we didn't do the send the voice files over, we just went straight into recording, um, which is why I now send voice files if I can, because after the first chapter, he came back and said, that person doesn't sound like that. I was like, but you told me there wasn't an
no.
audio in your head. So how can you know that he doesn't sound like that? And the
Is
way
it?
he said he sounds was like a different character that I'd already done. So if I had to fix
Oh
it,
no.
would have to change the other one. So I just wrote back to him and I said, look, the reason I've done that is because I heard this character like this because of what you've written here. And I needed their voices to be very different because they talk together a lot. And I chose this kind of voice because of these points that you wrote about. Would you do me a favor? I'll change it if you really need me to, but I'll have to re-record everything. Can you have another listen based on what I've said and tell me if you still think it needs changing? And he came back to me and he said, no, given everything we've talked about, I've listened to it. I'm happy. Leave it as it is. I breathed the biggest sigh of relief.
I
Well,
bet.
yeah. Do you find it uh, more difficult to do a character who has a pre-established voice or someone who's completely voiceless
Um,
previously?
so the James Potter books, I obviously had a mixture because we had
Yep.
characters that carried over from the original series.
Yep.
And in a way, that's taken a lot of discussion out of it because I already know, everybody knows how they're supposed to sound. The only thing I had was I had to copy Jim Dale's voicing of
Mm.
characters. So there are characters' voices in there that are 100% not my choice, but that's how Jim Dale did it. So I copied.
Okay, so
One
you're
example being
yeah,
Bellatrix.
okay.
Ooh.
Yeah, because he does the French
Yep.
accent for
And
Bellatrix, whereas in
and
my
I
head
found that
she's not French.
no, and in my head she wasn't either. I was asked specifically by Matt to do it that way for continuity from the original
Yeah.
range of books.
So because British man trying to copy an American man doing a British accent or a French accent.
No, the actor who did the American series was British.
Oh, was he Jim Dale? Sorry,
Oh yeah.
apologies. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I don't think I realized that. I also
No.
that reminds me of in the Harry Potter movies when Emma Watson was playing Helena Bonham Carter's, or no, Helena Bonham Carter was playing Bellatrix, who was actually Hermione pretending to be Bellatrix.
Yeah.
And so it was
Yeah.
like a whole is oh
That's
my
getting
goodness.
a little
Yeah.
bit
She
Inception like.
she got, if I remember correctly, she got Emma Watson to do the entire scene the way she would do it, and she copied her movements, her
Okay.
her way of talking as pretending to be Bellatrix as her doing Bellatrix.
Okay.
Amazing. So it was it was Emma Watson pretending to be Hermione, pretending to be Helena
Bellatrix.
Bonham
Bellatrix.
Carter, pretending to be
Oh, I
Bellatrix.
see. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that really is
And
Inception.
well, there is one even harder than that, and that's with Daniel Radcliffe pretending to
Oh,
be uh, all the other characters pretending to be him in the final book, in the final movie, well, the first
yeah.
part of the final movie.
That
The
is quite,
Seven
yeah.
Potters. Yeah.
Yeah, the
The
Seven Parts. So you got yeah,
multi-potter.
Bonnie. No, not Bonnie. She wasn't part of it, but you got Rupert Grint pretending to be Ron Weasley, pretending to be Harry Potter,
Yeah.
and Daniel Radcliffe's doing all the characters.
Yeah. Especially Fleur.
Fleur, yeah,
Don't
yeah.
look at me.
Don't look at me.
Yeah.
That's fun. So I
Although,
actually have to
taking my brain back to that, I get sad because I think of Hagrid. Sorry, Hagrid.
oh,
Hedwig. I mean,
oh yeah.
Hedwig.
yeah.
Yeah.
No
There's a couple
spoilers,
of
but yes.
yeah. No, yeah. I
I don't know where it is now, but I have the mug of Hedwig from the Harry Potter experience at the studio.
Oh, nice.
yeah.
That's my souvenir that I kept was the mug.
That
Oh, I love it.
I've
that's
never been one for. My daughter has wands and Ravenclaw handbag and scarves and everything, but I just got a mug.
Oh,
I've never been one
this is all I
for sort
need.
of wearing labels, but I have a
Mhm.
mug.
Well, in Jamie, in my first video of James Potter, one of the first things we do is show off our mugs, and mine had a little white owl on the handle of it, so I get
Okay.
it.
I've
The
got one of my
mug that I
mugs has
have
a snake on it.
is the white owl. It's just white owl.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, with what you were saying about that scene with Hedwig, um, in the first chapter of book 2, the James Potter series, there's yeah, it's a difficult scene to get through, but it's a great scene, and you do it very well.
Emotional scenes are tricky.
Mm.
Um, the one, the most emotional scene I've ever had to do, in my opinion, is actually from Ruins of Camelot.
Hmm.
And there's a graveside scene. So if you haven't read it yet, I won't try and give you any spoilers.
Hmm.
But
I want to read it again now.
I found that so emotional,
Mm.
and I couldn't. So what I actually had to do was cut out the narration and just do the dialogue, because the emotion you hear in my voice is
Wow.
100% real. I let
Yeah,
myself get worked up into that state as if I was the one grieving at the graveside,
yeah,
and
That's
then
amazing.
go back in and fill in all the narration.
Mm.
That's the only way I could do that whole section, because it was that powerful, which is huge kudos to George for writing it in the first place.
well,
Yes. That is
um,
beautiful. I love
I
that
think I'm
strategy.
I think I'm gonna have to read Ruins of Camelot after my current re-listen slash read of the James Potter books.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me,
I think they're great stories. I think they're well worth a read,
yeah.
and I really I'd love to hear what you think about them when you've done it.
Hmm. Let me throw out there too, The Nightmare Pearl is a really good one. It's a darker one. And that he wrote, but of course he ties in James very loosely, but he brings it in that one as well, and it's always fun that
And I've not read that one.
yeah, yeah, he's got some that are like more creepy on the creepy side, but
Yeah.
it's never. I'm not a horror movie person. It's never like
Oh yeah, no, me neither.
to that extent, but I don't know. I guess it could be interpreted into a movie, but as you're reading it, it's just more cerebral. It's more the,
Okay.
you know, mystery of it more than anything. But yeah, I love how he does it. I also have to stop in 5 minutes. I feel like we could talk literally all
Oh,
day.
we've gone on, I must admit, way longer than I thought we were going to be doing today, but it's just been so much fun sitting here chatting.
is
So, but if you've got to go in 5 minutes, I think this is an opportunity to say bye bye, basically, and wind up. And hopefully, we'll have another opportunity to do something like it again. But
fingers crossed. It'd be nice.
I would love
Um,
that.
I was just gonna ask before we head off though.
yeah,
Do you know of if there's any plans to turn George's most recent book into an audiobook?
what is his most recent book?
Sigil.
What are you
Wait,
holding up?
put it in
It's
front of your
been
face.
filtered out.
Oh, Sigil.
Oh,
Yes,
I've
that's a
not even
great one.
seen that one. I've only seen a picture on Facebook, which I'm seldom on.
Oh, let's please make a connection here. Let's do
I
this. I think he might be doing like a dramatized, he might have already done like a dramatized version of it. Or he was working on it at some point. So that might be in the works, but I would love to hear you read it too.
he hasn't reached out to me, but that
I
doesn't
think
mean
with
he won't, but it also doesn't mean he will at the moment. I'll have to look it up and see if that's something that he's interested in doing.
it is a good read. Also he did Brass. It was another one. It was a shorter book. But he did like a dramatized,
Which I
like a
was involved in the
full sound effects.
dramatized. I did a couple of the voices in the dramatized
Oh
version of
yeah?
Brass. Yeah.
Oh, nice, nice.
So
That's
I've
awesome.
done quite a few of his little dramas, little audio dramas that he did, um, sort of based on sort of Twilight Zone kind of concept. I did
That's
quite a few
fun.
characters in different ones, and on one of them I narrated as well. So
That's
yeah,
fun. On this,
you'll you'll hear my voice. I've done some other work for him, and sometimes it's surprised me. I've given him different characters, and I thought one of them was an American character, and that's the one he went with. And I was like, that's not the one I thought you'd go for.
I love George. He's awesome. I got to meet him in person last year. That was so much fun.
I still
And
have not had that pleasure, but I've not crossed the pond yet. So
got to come
one
on
day.
over. Well, both of you do. I don't know. Somebody's got to go somewhere. One of us has to travel.
Yeah, I
Two of
might
us, I
wait
guess.
for wait. I won't say what I was about to say. I'll have to wait for a while though.
Hmm. All right, let's leave it on a
I
cliffhanger
I was
today.
about to say I no, but some things are best left sort of hanging in the air there. But
I agree.
Right.
I 100% agree. Sometimes it's best to leave them on a cliffhanger.
exactly, it's a device used by so many movie makers and book writers.
And it can be very, very frustrating at times.
Yep, I agree. But it's
So
been a
just to
delight talking to you both, and really nice to have met you. And yeah, I would love to chat to you both again about this and
Awesome.
other topics, because I just felt that we could have gone on for hours here.
Well,
Absolutely.
you are a lovely person, Jess. You're so humble and just
Thank you very
I
much.
have enjoyed. I'm going to enjoy editing this because I get to hear your voice again. And so thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking me. Take care.
All right.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Why, thank you very much.